4 months on, the UK's referendum remains a very divisive issue. Remainers hold on to the hope that Article 50 will never be triggered, while those that believe that the UK is better away from the grip of the EU want to set the process rolling as soon as possible. John Rowland is Executive Director at Cicero, and he joins us now with some more. John, welcome. Are politicians making this more difficult than perhaps maybe they should be?
It is a difficult problem, and the issue is that the Brexit referendum gave us a result, which is that we are going to leave the EU. I think even most Remainers accept that that is probably going to happen now. But what there is no consensus on is exactly what that leave looks like. So what you've got now is this huge fight between different wings of certainly the Conservative Party and Parliament more broadly about how do we settle this discussion, because it wasn't really treated in the referendum campaign itself. So now the politics of it are taking over, and there is this sort of struggle to settle what Brexit looks like.
And of course that struggle doesn't just happen here, it's happening across Europe. Absolutely. Because the EU has a special interest as well. And this summit we've just had has been the most extraordinary show of posturing that I think that I've seen from the EU.
Yeah, well, the thing is the EU is not a monolithic political entity anymore. It is very much a coalition of member states, all with their own interests, and all of that's being mediated through the EU institutions. And I think what you're seeing now is, more sharply than ever, the differences of opinion between different parts of Europe, different visions for Europe. And I think, looking forward to the Brexit negotiations, you're going to see that played out over and over again, that it's not enough for Britain to have a good relationship with Germany or a good relationship with France and expect everybody else to fall in line. I don't think that's the way things are working anymore.
Well, I want to take a look at the French and German relationship in particular with regard to specific trade deals, but I think, broadly speaking, Europe is not covering itself in glory at the moment, is it? Because of the CETA deal, which looks like it's going to be falling apart because of one small area in one particular sovereign state within the EU.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that the Walloons in Belgium are getting a lot of stick for, frankly, for holding this deal up. But actually what you look at is the direction of travel, and that is against the liberalisation of trade across Europe. I mean, in Germany there is a hardening against trade policy, a liberalisation of trade, certainly in France. So yes, Wallonia is kind of the biggest expression of that, but it is a problem across the whole of Europe. And there is always a problem there that if Europe cannot do a deal with a country like Canada, you've got to ask the question, who can it do a deal with? And
looking down the list of the UK exports and imports on a recent paper that's been published by Cicero, it's interesting to see that, in fact, Germany and France have got most to lose from the UK leaving, so one would imagine they've got most to gain by making sure that they remain on a good relationship. But that doesn't seem to be their interest.
Well, I think there needs to be a separation between economics and politics. And if you're looking at the numbers, everybody can come to a rational deal. Let's talk about this. But the thing that really is at stake here is the future of the EU as a collective body. And what that means is that if the UK leaves, it cannot be seen to be given a better deal on the outside than it had on the inside, because that makes the whole project kind of untenable. So I think if you look at the immediate short-term costs in terms of loss of trade, that may be outweighed by the political imperative to hold this together. And you saw this happen in the Eurozone crisis as well, that you shouldn't underestimate the will of European countries to defend the status quo against things that might break it apart, even though that might not look like the best decision at the time.
How much of this do you think as well is centred around the worry that the existing politicians have in the EU about the way the EU may look in 12 months' time? We've got a secondary look at the Austrian recent election that's been asked to be rerun, where there's a populist vote building out there. Of course, France, well headlined in April, May next year. Germany's got an election as well next year. There's a lot of worry out there, isn't there, about the way that populist vote is beginning to take hold in Europe?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a huge amount of political change going on in Europe at the moment. There are lots of referenda. We've got the Netherlands are looking at an election. We've got the Italian constitutional referendum. You've mentioned France and Germany. So lots will change. We know that in the next 12 months. And I think that's something we all have to bear in mind looking at this from this side of the channel, that this isn't just determined by the domestic politics of the UK. It's also what's going on in Europe. And, if you have a Eurosceptic in charge, a Eurosceptic president in Austria, even though he's a figurehead, that says something about the direction of travel across the whole of Europe.
One final question is, you've got a lot of clients that are based in London, but they have a lot of European exposure. What are you telling clients then about how they should position themselves ahead of what looks to be a very turbulent year?
Well, I think the first thing is keep calm. I think there is a lot of posturing. It's very febrile at the moment. I think people need to look at what the long-term trends are. And I think in general, financial companies are good at having insurance policies. So you need to start to think about what your business might look like in the future. Some businesses are kind of going down that route now, looking at what they can do to make their businesses Brexit-proof, as it were. But then there are others who are seeing some sorts of competitive advantage out of this as well. So it really is, it's different firms have different interests in this discussion, and some may not even be affected at all.
Yeah, OK, John, we'll leave you there, but thanks for joining us. John Rowland is Executive Director at Cicero here in London.